Welcome to Making the Cut podcast with Chris Hill and Sean Winter, where we help you succeed in life and business by sharing principles and strategies that guide some of the most successful people in the world. Welcome to episode 39 of the Making the Cut podcast. I'm Sean Winter, and today I'll be taking this one solo as Chris Hill is traveling, but I get to connect with Brooke Williamson, Top Chef winner, restaurateur, chef owner, an amazing person, and we're very excited to dive in. But first, a quick word from our sponsor, Le Cordon Bleu. If you want to be the best, you have to learn from the best. Le Cordon Bleu is the largest network of culinary and hospitality schools with more than 35 institutes in 20 countries around the world. From culinary arts to business management, Le Cordon Bleu will provide you with the most respected qualifications to become a successful entrepreneur in the food industry today. Learn more at cordonbleu.edu/USA. And with that, we're going to dive right in, have a great conversation, talk to Brooke a little bit about food entrepreneurship, her story, where it began, some of the hardships, and I'm very excited. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So today we have Brooke Williamson. Brooke, how are you doing today?
I'm great, thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we're just going to kind of dive right in. So when you look back, what's really helped you to get to where you are today?
Well, I've been doing this for a very long time. So looking back, takes a minute, but I honestly would have to say every single piece of everything that I've done has helped get me where I am today. The good and the bad, nothing, specific comes to mind. I think it's just a collective, list of experiences.
Got it. Yeah. And you started, early on. When did you officially kind of start this career in culinary arts?
I would say professionally, like in professional kitchens, I would say 17 years old. And I'm turning 40 this year. So that gives you an idea of how long I've been doing this.
Just a little while. Just a little
just
while.
Just a minute.
That's good. So we're going to kind of fast forward a little bit because you worked in the industry, kind of established yourself a little bit, but then you decided that you wanted to venture out on your own. So can you talk just a little bit about why did you decide that you wanted to venture out on your own? And also, when did you decide that you were going to do this?
Sure. Well, I think I decided that I was going to do it at the age of like 7. So there wasn't like one standout moment where I said to myself, you know what, I could do this. It was like from a very, very early age, I always knew what I wanted to do. And I fortunately had very supportive parents who kind of were of this state of mind that if you work hard enough, you can accomplish anything you want. So that was always my plan. I worked for other people. Obviously, early in my career, I put a lot of emphasis on learning and working hard and reading and never complaining about the long days and physically demanding shifts. And I got a lot of sort of breaks early on in my career. And by the age of 22, I was an executive chef, which was kind of unheard of, especially for a female back then. And, I'm not saying I deserved that title by any means at that age, but it was given to me and I felt like I could handle it. I always went into situations where I actually wasn't sure if I could handle it just to challenge myself. That was like, in my opinion, the most satisfying reward is accomplishing something that you never knew you could. So, I would always say, yeah, sure, I can do that. I can do that job. I'm totally capable without 100% knowing that I was. And then I just, I would throw myself into it and make it happen. So, when I left a restaurant called Zach's in Brentwood. I was the chef there when I was 22. I probably left at the age of 22 or 23 and started a catering company because I just wasn't sure what I wanted to do next, where I wanted to go. And I had been the boss of my own kitchen, but I just, there weren't any other kitchens where I felt like I needed to run to. So started a catering company actually with my future husband, who at the time had been my sous chef. And the catering company took off really quickly, and we ended up having to look for a commercial kitchen to prep out of. And that commercial kitchen that we ended up finding happened to be a restaurant, and we thought we could do both, and then ended up just doing the restaurant. So we opened our first place when we were 23, 24 years old, and had no idea what we were doing.
Yeah, that's an early age to leap like that.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't give you a whole ton of life experience. Jumping into a position like that. And, we definitely learned a lot from our mistakes.
Absolutely. And some could debate that it's maybe sometimes better that you just jump in and get those tough life lessons instead of trying to educate yourself, 6 ways from Sunday on what to do. And it's all theory and not actual application. Would you agree to that?
Yeah, I mean, I was put into a situation where, my mom and a couple of family friends had helped fund our first restaurant, and we were not in a position to just say, we can lose your money. So we had to do everything in our power to make it work. And we did a lot of it ourselves. It was definitely a labor of love, but it made it so much more that important. And I didn't go to culinary school, so I consider that the most expensive culinary school that anybody's ever gone to. Yeah. Losing your first restaurant, is definitely a pricey learning lesson.
Absolutely. And so if you can talk just for a moment on a granular level, if you think back what do you think was the hardest part about that period of stepping out on your own, just so others who maybe are contemplating doing that can maybe understand the reality of what it was like?
Sure. Well, I mean, I got into the restaurant business because I loved food and I loved to cook, and I had a lot of confidence that I could put together a menu and execute a menu and have my orders in place and my, kitchen financials in place. But, when you open a restaurant, it's a much grander level of multitasking. There's, learning how to bookkeep and learning how to staff and manage a staff and, work with a wine program at the same time. And there's so many hats you have to wear that, it's just, I feel like if you don't, if you're not incredibly passionate and 100% excited about what you're doing, then, giving up is the easiest thing to do. But it's just, it turned into a business rather than something I was doing because I love to do it. So it turned into something that I was doing because I had to make it work. And on so many levels, that was very exciting. I feel like I do have a business brain, and it was a crash course in learning every facet of the restaurant industry. But a lot of chefs don't want to wear both of those hats and or don't know how to wear both of those hats, which is totally fine. I feel like I have a creative brain, but I personally don't feel as creative as a lot of my chef counterparts. However, a lot of my chef counterparts perhaps aren't as business savvy as I am. So it's just a matter of wearing all the hats. And if you don't have the capability of wearing all the hats, finding somebody who can, to partner with you.
That's a great point. A partnership. Absolutely.
Yeah. And understanding that you need someone there to be your counterpoint. I know a lot of chefs who think they can do it all and just can't. And understanding your capabilities and your business level is very important, I think.
Agreed. I forget who said it, but it was something like, if you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together, or something like that. Mm. But yeah, you just can't do everything by yourself at scale. It's just impossible.
Absolutely not. And I was fortunate enough to end up marrying my business partner, and I always know that there is someone there to back me up. We have each other to not only for business support, but emotional support is incredibly important. If I feel like 99% of business relationships end because the personalities don't mesh. So, that's important too.
Mm-hmm. Completely agree. Now, kind of dovetailing with what we were just talking about, if you had all of our audience of aspiring chef entrepreneurs, food entrepreneurs, kind of all together, and they hadn't stepped out on their own yet, they're thinking about it, they have an idea, what's your advice for them before they make that leap, essentially?
I don't know that there's any piece of, singular piece of advice that I could offer anyone to, pave the road. I think it's all about experience, and there's no way to get that experience without diving in. But on the same token, I feel like if you don't have your ducks in a row, you're setting yourself up for failure. So I think setting yourself up for success in terms of, there are a lot of business plans out there. I remember when I opened my first restaurant, there was some online business plan template that I used to give to investors so that they would have some idea of what we were doing and our projected costs and our projected expenses. And at the end of the day, none of it resembled anything of what actually unfolded. So, I would say expect the unexpected, know that there will always be bumps in the road. And the thing that I always come back to is if you're not 100% excited and passionate about what you're doing, it will not work, because there will be so many days where you want to give up and it's hard, and, you're scatterbrained and tired and uninspired. And that's just part of it. You get through the day and you look forward to the next moment that feels like you've accomplished something. I think that passion and excitement is so important. And I think a lot of people get into the industry because they think it's exciting on its own. But if you're not bringing the excitement to the table, it will never exist.
Absolutely agree. And you touch on something with the business plan. It's so true that some people will do this and it unfolds in a completely different way. I mean, there's value in doing it because it helps you flesh out an idea and get a plan. But there's so many stories that I hear that it didn't unfold the way that they thought it was going to unfold.
Yeah. And I think that, for me, when, we've opened several restaurants. And I think that what I've sort of taken from my experiences in the past, that I find to be one of the most important things is understanding a lease and a location and an audience. So, we've kind of set ourselves into this position where we have these neighborhood restaurants where I feel like we're bringing something to the table in the area that nobody else is, which I think is very important. Something that has some demand, not just because you feel like you want to go there, but because you know that other people in the area will want to go there. And they can only get that experience at your place. And then understanding a lease is really important. And I think that is something that I spend a lot of time. I have a lot of friends who are opening first restaurants who call me and ask for lease advice. And I think that understanding a lease is so incredibly important, because that's the foundation of your entire business. What you're paying per month, who you're paying, how long you're paying, how much you're going to invest, and how long it's going to take you to pay that back based on what your projected revenue is going to be. There's a pretty simple formula. If you plug all that in together, you're either going to potentially make money or you're in absolutely no way going to. So, eliminating that latter, there's no chance that I can make it here, is something surprisingly that a lot of people don't do.
Yeah, so true. We just ran a piece about phantom space with commercial leasing, and
and paying for space that you actually don't have because you didn't measure. Yeah, it's exactly right. Or can't use, that some people have no idea that they should be looking at that level. So true.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to pay rent on common areas in between walls between me and another location.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And these are the things that people should absolutely understand. You're going to step out on your own, especially if you're going to go the brick and mortar route. Man, that lease negotiation and understanding, I can't agree with you more. That is so critical, because then you can take that you can take something off the table based upon the projections alone there.
Sure. And I've had a lot of friends say, well, I'm going to negotiate a shorter term lease because what if this doesn't work out? I don't want to be held responsible for a 10-year lease. But one, don't do it if you don't have the faith that you can make a 10-year lease work. Two, how are you going to pay off what you've invested unless you have the time to do that? And three, if it turns out not being something that you end up wanting to do in 2 or 3 years, then you have 7 years of a lease that you can sell and perhaps recoup some of what you've invested.
Good point. Yes, I love it. So now, changing gears, what's the hardest part for you about staying on top of everything?
I mean, that has changed a lot over the years. My biggest challenges right now end up revolving around me being there or not being there. So I travel a lot now since I did Top Chef and became someone that somebody actually, knows and cares about inviting to events across the country. I try to take advantage of that because, I know that excitement has an expiration date. And, I feel like anything that I can do to potentially make my restaurants busier is, going to take some weight off my shoulders. So I'm gone a lot. And that's never something I anticipated when I started opening restaurants. And I always figured I'd be there, which is part of the reason why all of our restaurants are, geographically close together. But, I find honestly being a mother makes things more difficult. It's definitely been a challenge since I had a child, sort of weighing out where I need to be and when. I would like to be the mother that puts her child to bed every night. I know that that's not going to happen because I've chosen a different life than that. But I do try to make that my first priority, which I think is why you don't see a ton of mothers opening restaurants. So, it's the life work balance is really, really difficult. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. It does. And I'm not blowing smoke by any means. I have so much respect, so much more respect, because I now have a 1.5-year-old daughter. And my life before, I was a little bit later when I had my little girl, 34 maybe or something like that. And so my life before, I had an idea of what kids was maybe going to be like, but until you have kids, you have no idea what it's like.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, to hear that you do that and you're a mother, I know what it's like for me and my wife and me trying to, do my own business and things of that nature. So it's incredibly challenging with kids, let alone traveling, being a public figure, having multiple businesses and trying to keep those plates spinning. So much respect for you. I completely get it.
Thank you. I will tell you, I have a lot of, I live off of my calendar and my to-do lists. So if there's one thing that does make my life easier, it's writing everything down. I hate being late. I hate, people thinking that I, can't keep up, so I make a point of trying to be early to everything and being on top of everything and never, never forgetting an appointment or not showing up to something or emailing someone back. I feel like my phone is in my hand 24 hours a day simply so that I don't fall behind on emails. So, I think staying on top of things is much as possible definitely helps. And I also think that an exercise regimen, is really important, at least to me, mentally, for focus purposes. If I can, go to a spin class for an hour and completely forget about everything that I have to do for that 45 minutes to an hour, I can leave that class feeling refreshed and awake and able to accomplish so much more.
I could not agree with you more. I've got my bike in my garage. I am a junkie on that thing. Yeah. I completely understand. So changing gears again. So now, what do you believe, just in general, maybe some components for one to achieve success in the food business, especially these days?
Consistency, I think, is something that is underrated. Providing an experience for people that is pleasant and satisfying and leaves them feeling better than they did when they walk in, but doing that consistently is not as easy as people think, with turnover in staff and all the factors that go into giving that experience. It's I think consistency is definitely at the top of my list. We have a Hawaiian concept, which is a fast casual concept where the menu does not change, and it's very simple. It's poke and musubi and shave ice and Dole Whip, and that's it. And we have, a list of ingredients that we assemble in certain ways to, hopefully give people exactly what they're looking for. But if they've had a great poke bowl one day and then they come back the next day and it doesn't taste the same, they're less likely to come back. So I think that consistency is going to be my go-to.
On a granular level, so how do you achieve that consistency in your businesses? Is it empowering the managers, recipe cards? Just what do you all do?
Yeah, I mean, all of the above. Definitely having managers who feel like they're appreciated and inspired and want to show up to work is very important, because ultimately they're the ones that are going to hold the cooks accountable, the front of the house accountable. If they're not excited, then nobody is. So managers are definitely. I rely on my staff more than anything because I'm unable to be in 5 places at once. So, that's, I think, the most important thing.
And speaking of staff, do you look for a particular type of individual, a characteristic, a trait when you are bringing people into your organization?
No, I wouldn't say that there's specifically something I'm looking for, but there are things that I'm looking to avoid. People who are overly confident. I'm all for people who, including myself, who feel like they can accomplish the job and walk into an interview feeling confident and excited to tackle whatever's in front of them. But there's a line where it starts to become cockiness, and that, in my opinion, means that they're not interested in learning and adapting to their surroundings. And I feel like that is something that I'm looking for personally every day. I'm looking to learn from other people. I'm looking to adapt to my surroundings, things change every day, depending on the weather, depending on the atmosphere, depending on the attitude in the kitchen. You kind of have to move past those things and adapt. And I think that adaptability is something that is so much more important to me than, say, a culinary degree.
Yeah, very powerful. I think it was Carol Dweck that wrote The Growth Mindset and makes a case for the people that are open to learning as opposed to having a fixed mindset. Like you mentioned, that person that is not really there to learn. The people that are open are the more successful individuals is when you are keeping it open.
Things change every day in the culinary world. So if you're not interested in reading the next super cool thing that's going on in the city or in the food world, or even learning a new technique, then, why are you doing it?
So true. And now, in relation to the various businesses, the restaurants that you have, and the things that you're doing, so some people, they may look at you and think, gosh, you have all these things, but they don't see that you started somewhere, right? You started with one and then two, and then you kind of continue to scale upwards until you are where you are. In that process of scaling up to where you are, what do you think really helped you to get to that point, to go from managing one place to then two, to then three, to having several? What was that scaling process like, the keys to being able to do that?
I think a lot of it for me was understanding that I had to relinquish a bit of control, that I can't control every situation. And, I can't see every plate that leaves the kitchen every single time a plate leaves the kitchen. I can't see every interaction that a waiter has with a customer. So at some point, I have to have some faith that we're hiring the right people, or that they're being trained properly, or that that the people who I feel like deserve the positions that they're in, can actually handle the positions that they're in without being micromanaged. So I think for me, it was relinquishing control, which was really hard for me to do, and often still hard for me to do every time I'm in any one of my kitchens. I see something happen and it frustrates me, or, I want to go in and redo something myself because I feel like I could maybe do it better. But you know what? That's not something that's practical, especially if you want multiple locations. And, the reasoning behind wanting multiple locations was not only for, a stretch in creative, diversity and outlets for creativity. That's one thing that is a bonus, and it's really great. However, I'm fully aware that the restaurant industry, restaurants, they have a lifespan. And if I'm going to think realistically in terms of what I want out of my life, ultimately, I'd like to enjoy life, and potentially that next restaurant that I open may not work out because of just the nature of the business. So, having a backup plan to me is incredibly important. And I think it's a realistic mindset to be in.
And on that last point there, what does that backup plan look like, right? So if you're opening a place, is it a backup plan in terms of an exit strategy that you kind of map out, or a mindset that you need to go in having? What does that look like? Loaded question.
Well, I think that everything that my husband and I do, everything comes with a backup plan, whether it be a lease with an exit strategy. And part of that is, we want that 10-year lease so that if 3 years into it, this doesn't look like it was a good idea, we have something to sell. It's an insurance policy, so, I think that if we feel like something is causing more stress than it is good, then we are of the sort of experience level to say it's perhaps time to rethink what we're doing. And I think having the flexibility in your head and the lack of ego potentially to say I did something that didn't work is really important. So at the moment, there's potentially a concept that is fine, it's doing okay, but could be better. So I think that having that sort of lack of ego to say, maybe we're doing something wrong, maybe we could be doing something better, is something that you don't see in everybody. And I think that having the the mindset to sort of pivot and shift and adjust is just as important as having the passion to do it in the first place.
Well said. I can't agree with you more. Now, you mentioned your husband, Nick. So between you all, obviously you have a great business partnership going, successful, many years in the making. What do you think has contributed to such a successful partnership between the two of you? Business partnership, that is.
I think it's a respect for each other's opinion. I think it definitely does help that we are married and don't have. I mean, the last thing we want to do is take work stress home into our personal lives. So I think that, like any relationship, we've learned that we need to hear out each other's opinions and ideas and give them enough respect to discuss, to consider, and potentially disagree with, and not turn that into a life-changing situation. So, I think just listening and understanding and realizing that we are stronger as a team than we are individually. So, I think it's like any relationship.
Yeah, powerful point, especially the listen to understand. Look, I'm going to put myself out there as one of the hardest things for me to do.
Oh, I'm not saying it's done easily or even frequently, but at least we understand how important it is.
I love it. That's great. So a couple more and then we'll wrap it up here. So changing gears once more. From a marketing and advertising standpoint, I'm curious, what have you learned up to this point about either marketing and or advertising that you would impart on other food entrepreneurs, aspiring chef owners?
I think that remaining relevant and exciting has a lot to be said for itself. Reinventing yourself every so often, changing the menus, staying inspired, staying excited, staying in the public eye. I think they're all incredibly valuable things. My husband and I have made a point of not advertising per se, in the traditional sense of, we won't buy advertising space, because I feel like it changes the perception of who you are and what you do. So I think that if you've somehow managed to figure out how to remain relevant, whether it be with public events, charity events, exciting events, TV, there's so many different ways to remain relevant these days that I think that if you think by putting an ad in a magazine that you're going to draw customers that way, that, there's always something else that could be done that I feel like is going to bring more excitement to what you're doing.
So maybe more of a PR type strategy as opposed to an actual advertising. Is that
exactly? So that, we've always seen great value in PR. We will always have a PR company, whether it be as a liaison for events that we're doing, or just to make sure the press knows something new and exciting that we happen to have on the horizon. I think that is so much more valuable than buying ad space. So, money well spent on publicity versus advertising, I think is the key.
Yeah, solid points. And for the ones that perhaps don't have maybe they're starting out, they don't have a budget for a PR company, developing relationships with either writers or journalists or bloggers or something like that in their area, where their audience is going to be at, and then reaching out to them essentially, right?
Yeah, I mean, and in this day, the opportunities for creating your own brand and publicity is is so accessible, whether it be via Instagram and learning how to take, good food photography and knowing what is going to get people excited to look at, that's a whole business in its own. There are people that are completely running their lives off of Instagram. So, if you can sort of learn and utilize the value in creating excitement yourself, I know I have a lot of friends who don't have publicists who are constantly in the public eye.
Yeah, I feel like some of those tools with like Instagram or Facebook, the audience insights, and you can dive into what posts are resonating with people. I feel like it's in today's day and age. Yeah, it's just
really worth brushing up on how to do all that and how to understand it all if you don't.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed. All right, last two then. Completely left field, but have you had something that was a negative review or negative press that hit you incredibly hard but helped you grow professionally? Something that brought a lesson along with it? If so, what was it, and what was that lesson that you learned?
I wouldn't say that there was one specific negative review that really turned my life around. I think that using those negative reviews collectively has been very useful to me. I think, there will always be, you can't please everybody. You have to understand that. And if I let every negative comment that I've read in my career bother me, it would knock me down and turn me into a different person. So I have to look at them as a whole and understand that, if one person says, the lobster mashed potatoes, for lack of anything in my head, were too salty, to each their own. Perhaps it was too salty for them. I tasted them that night. They tasted okay to me. But, 3 reviews that say that those potatoes were too salty means that maybe there's an issue here, and maybe it's something that I have to look into. So I think using those negative reviews as a tool to educate yourself on what makes people happy and what doesn't make people happy is really important, because at the end of the day, I'm trying to provide an experience for other people. I'm not trying to provide an experience for myself. And, those people are who are keeping me in business. And if I'm happy, then I have nothing at the end of the day. So, if I can read stuff that will educate me on making people happier, then I welcome that, absolutely.
I love that. Look for that pattern, maybe not for that one-off or something.
Exactly.
I love that. And the last one, what's on the horizon for you? What's upcoming for Chef Brooke Williamson?
I don't know. I feel like I've always got lots of balls in the air, but I think right now it's a matter of maintenance. We've done a lot in the last couple of years, and I'm also traveling a lot, and I think that I want to make sure that everything that we're doing currently is the best that it can be before I move forward and stretch myself thinner. So I think right now we're just trying to maintain. The only thing I will say is that Hudson House in Redondo, which is about to hit its 10-year mark, we just re-signed another 10-year lease. And like I said, if we're constantly trying to reinvent ourselves and stay relevant and stay exciting. So we're going to have a little bit of a facelift / menu revamp going on at Hudson House, so that we can open fresh for our second 10-year term as a new exciting spot. I think we've done a really great job for the last 10 years of maintaining, who we are and staying. What was that word I used? Staying consistent. But there's only so far consistency can take you, I think. And I think it's time for a fresh face. So that'll be sort of what's next on the horizon for Hudson House.
Awesome. Very good. Congratulations on that. And I guess I'll accept the invite. Yes, I'll go. That's fun. No,
absolutely.
Congratulations. That's a huge milestone in one's career. A decade.
Thanks.
That's huge. Well, Brooke, this has been phenomenal. Thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So that was the conversation with Brooke Williamson. What a great time. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let us know what you think. A review on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you access the podcast. And with that, we'll leave you with one final quote from Brooke Williamson herself from our conversation. If you're not 100% excited and passionate about what you're doing, it will not work. And with that, we're signing off.